already here. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ingrid Rodríguez Ramos, and she's Angela Valentín Rodríguez, and we are from the University of Puerto Rico at Mayaguez. And today we'll be sharing findings from our Humanities Puerto Rico project titled Empowerment Through Poetry, which explores poetry as a vehicle for empowerment and student formation.
Poetry has long been a means of healing, expression, and social transformation. Our premise was that poetry could be used not only as an artistic practice, but also as an educational tool to foster empowerment, empathy, and ethical reflection. This initiative connects the humanities and social sciences through community based research, promoting both women's agency and student development.
The project was funded by Humanities Puerto Rico. It's part of the National Endowment for the Arts and implemented into two rural communities, Yahueca in Adjuntas and Calle Abajo in Lajas. It brought together faculty from social science and Hispanic studies and students from different academic programs to collaborate with community leaders. Each site became a living classroom for experiential situated learning.
Our work pursued three main objectives: to highlight the voices of contemporary Puerto Rican women writers, women poets, to foster empowerment and self expression among participating women, and to train students through situated learning, that is, learning through authentic participation and reflection in real life contexts.
Our conceptual base combined two complementary frameworks. First, we use the framework of situated learning, which emphasize learning throughout meaningful participation in community settings. And second, we use Yalom's therapeutic model, which identifies group factors such as cohesion, universality, catharsis, and interpersonal learning in order to create growth or to perceive growth in the people that are taking are part of the group. Together, they frame poetry as both creative and transformative group processes.
This was a mixed method study combining quantitative instruments with qualitative data from interviews, reflections, and group discussions. Participants included 16 women, 6 undergraduate students, and 2 professors. And we are currently preparing student interviews to evaluate whether situated learning effectively developed their skills, knowledge, and ethical values.
The first instrument, the empowerment and role of women's scale, showed no statistical significant difference between pre and post workshop means. However, difference emerged across communities. Adjuntas remained stable, while Lajas showed a slight upward trend. This aligns with our qualitative observations. Stronger group cohesion and participation in Lajas led to more visible empowerment processes.
So we show you the scale, and this other one, this slide shows the item by item analysis of the empowerment and role of women test questionnaire. Overall, we see a slight but consistent increase in post-test scores across most items, although there are no statistically significant differences. The effect sizes indicate meaningful progress, especially in areas related to political participation, self valuation, and economic agency. In short, the results suggest a steady growth in women's sense of empowerment, reflecting gains in confidence, decision making, and community involvement.
Uh, well, as I said, the difference reflect trends observed across post-test scores in empowerment and group processes. Although changes were modest, Qualitative findings indicate meaningful emotional and relational transformation among participants.
So the second instrument, which is the creative and personal experience questionnaire, also show no statistically significant changes, but participants' reflections reveal deeper emotional awareness and expressive confidence. The numbers stay stable, but the stories told us something different.
I'm sorry. Um, Although none of the changes reach statistical significance, the effect size suggests emotional and expressive strengthening, especially within the creative dimension. Overall, the positive trend indicates growth in self expression, identity awareness, and personal confidence, even if modest in magnitude.
Mhm. So, from the open ended responses from the questionnaires, four key themes emerge: self definition, sisterhood, emotional release, and collective agency. Women move from silence to voice, from isolation to connection, and from introspection to action. So, poetry became a bridge, a way to express, heal, and empower together.
For emphasis, we showed some of the expressions that the women in the workshops said. I'm not gonna read them all, but for example, they would say, "I'm stronger, calmer, and grateful. Writing helped me forgive myself. I found the courage to say what I feel."
Mhm. So, when integrating both sets of data, we found that quantitative stability contrasted with qualitative depth. In other words, what was not statistically significant, probably because of the size of the sample, was psychologically and socially meaningful.
Through the content of reflexive essays written by the students who facilitated the workshop as a situated learning experience, four main learning categories emerged. They discovered the transformative power of poetry, using it as a tool for healing and expression. They learned throughout empathy and shared experience, witnessing connection and sisterhood among women. They develop gender awareness and critical reflection, understanding the social impact of patriarchy, and they recognize the importance of continuity and research, calling for more workshops, larger samples, and instruments to measure empowerment and creativity.
So, some of the core insights from our discussion, we have to um, point out that poetry became a medium for healing and self discovery, helping women to turn emotion into action and agency. Empowerment, however, manifested differently across the two communities. In Adjuntas, it was more reflective, anchored in emotional healing and introspection. In Lajas, it took a collective form, driven by solidarity, connection, and emerging leadership. Finally, the entire process reflected Freire's idea of dialogue as liberation, where shared reflection and storytelling became acts of freedom and transformation.
The comparison between adjuntas and lajas revealed different trajectories in the development of cohesion and emotional openness. In adjuntas, the participants' prior relationship, they had a prior relationship because they were a constituted group already, facilitated the initial trust and immediate self-disclosure. And that's consistent with Yalom's emphasis on cohesion as a therapeutic factor, promoting confidence and interpersonal feedback. However, Irregular attendance and pre existing leadership hierarchies disrupted the group's equilibrium, at times limiting equal participation and the depth of collective reflection. Um, in Lajas, there was no prior bond, so the absence of those bonds resulted in a slower start, yet the process itself fostered progressive cohesion and increasingly emotional depth. Throughout writing and dialogue, members gradually develop mutual trust, engagement, mirroring Yalom's model of group evolution. Overall, what Adjuntas began with greater cohesion and
Mhm.
has developed it over time. Both groups illustrated that cohesion was important and was central for the process.
Mhm. So, the workshops use poetry as both art and intervention, blending psychology and the humanities. And through the process, we observed Yalom's therapeutic factors, universality, altruism, and interpersonal learning, and catharsis. As women recognized shared struggles, supported one another, and released emotion through writing. The qualitative analysis revealed then four main themes: self definition, sisterhood and community, emotional release and creativity, and collective agency.
Um, Together, this show a progression from self awareness to action, from individual voice to shared empowerment. Ultimately, the experience highlighted the transformative power of poetry and reinforces the importance of the humanistic community based education as a path toward different ways to work on healing, to work on community building, and to build collective strength.
Mhm. So, the content analysis of the reflective essays written by our student facilitators, framed within a situated learning approach, reveal then four main areas of learning: the transformative power of poetry, empathy and shared experience, gender awareness and critical reflection, and the importance of continuity and research. Through their narratives, our students highlighted poetry as a tool for healing, communication, and collective empowerment, and described how witnessing the participants' growth deepened their own understanding of community work and gender issues. However, their reflections were primarily centered on what they observed in the women participants rather than on their own technical and facilitation skills acquired through the process.
For this reason, it becomes essential to collect follow up interviews with the students to explore aspects such as communication strategies, group management, ethical sensitivity, the ability to integrate humanistic and psychological tools, but also other characteristics that literature says that are
Mhm.
important and can be acquired through situational learning. This additional data would allow for a more comprehensive understanding of how this situated learning in community contexts could foster personal and professional development in future practitioners.
Mhm. So, as some of our conclusions, we can say that poetry enhanced empowerment and emotional expression, especially in Lajas, where greater relational growth was observed. Humanities based methods proved effective for fostering reflection, empathy, and community engagement. The content analysis of student reflections revealed four key learning areas. However, students mainly reflected on what they observed in participants, not on the technical or facilitation skills they developed.
Yeah, they need like more. We need to promote more of a meta analysis.
Meta analysis. Yeah.
Metacognition. Promote the
Metacognition.
metacognition in
So,
the students. Um, what our next steps are? We need to conduct follow-up interviews with student facilitators to explore skills in communication, group management, ethical sensitivity, integration of humanistic tools, psychological tools, and others. And we need to expand the workshop implementation because the sample was very small. So we need to increase the sample
mhm,
in order to have more quantitative data to reach conclusions. And we need to design also instruments to measure empowerment, creativity, and facilitation outcomes in a way that is more precise than the questionnaires we built,
we
because this was not
meant.
meant to be a research. It was not designed as a research. It became a research as we saw that there were no much evaluation
Mhm.
assessment of what was doing outside in the communities.
So, these are some of our references. Uh, show our,
Oh, I'm
show
sorry.
show the references, and then we wish to acknowledge Humanities Puerto Rico. We wish to acknowledge the University of Puerto Rico at Mayaguez.
Our community partners, Azucando la Historia, Centro Paz para Ti,
Mhm.
Adjuntas, all participants who shared their voices, um, the students, the team of students
Mhm.
facilitators, because of their dedication, sensitivity, and commitment throughout the project. And we also thank the International Society for Technology, Education, and Science for this opportunity. And finally, we also thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions about what was the program, because we just present you the results of the program, but
Mhm.
we didn't explain much of the program because of the time. We're open to answer your questions.